9 of Multifamily Collective. I'm your host, Mike Brewer, and at the Multifamily Collective, it is our mission to tease out human potential in the multifamily space. And joining me today is Janet Rooseth, founder and CMO of Cadence Marketing Solutions, where she specializes in multifamily development and operations. Janet, welcome, and can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Cadence?
Hey, Mike. Yes, absolutely. I'm so flattered to be here on your podcast. Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about myself. So I am a 25 plus year veteran of this industry. Not sure how that happened. I honestly am one of those people that got hired at a dinner party during college to lease apartments. I think I just had the personality. And I have spent years overseeing the marketing departments of some of the larger companies here in the Twin Cities, 13 with Dominium when they grew from 2,000 units to 15,000. I think they're somewhere over 40 now. And then I shifted to a smaller local organization that was about 5,000 units with Stewart Co. And at about the 20-year mark, I took a little bit of a halftime pause and decided to step out on my own and consult, purely with the mission of being able to learn more about so many more tools that were coming into play in marketing and multifamily, and be able to bring those to other organizations that didn't have large-scale marketing teams like I had come from. So I stepped out more in I called it the Uber marketing role. When you need a strategic level marketing director, VP, thinker, but you don't need them on payroll. And from there, it'll be 4 years in September, and it's been just an absolute blessing of a ride in being able to repeat a lot of things I've already learned from my time in this industry and absorb just a ton of new information and make a lot more interesting contacts across clients and networks to just continue to serve this industry.
I love it. That story, sort of the genesis story of I guess for a lot of us who have kind of fell into the industry, right? It's almost become cliche at this point that everybody has that falling into this industry story, but
totally.
So 25 plus years in marketing, my imagination tells me that you've seen, call it an evolution or even a revolution, or maybe even a little bit of both. Can you sort of just in Reader's Digest form kind of walk us through maybe first day on the job and where we are today, and kind of sprinkle in some of what you do?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to date myself so much here, but when I started leasing in the beginning of my career, it was paper leases and you'd put them in a typewriter. And contracts that you signed with advertising reps were 3-ply.
Yeah. I remember.
And you faxed your ad changes every Friday. Maybe it was Thursday. Someone will correct me on that.
That's right.
And when that internet thing came and the first internet ads came, no leasing agent at that time actually had a computer.
That's right.
It was normal not to give your staff computers because they'll probably get distracted somewhere. And I think we also, fast forward 10 years, whatever, we didn't give people social media access because they might play on it. And now all of these things have 2/3 of them are dinosaurs by now, but you can't even imagine leasing without these tools.
No, it makes you wonder, how did we do it back then, right?
Definitely.
How did you get people to even come in the door, right?
Yep. And being around long enough, you and I have some pretty good history in this industry. Being around this long, if you ask me to think ahead 10 years, I mean, we're kind of past the Jetsons by now.
I think that is right. I think that's right. It's, I think, to your point, I wake up, let's say I wake up once a week and I read something online and I'm just perplexed. Like, I thought we had seen it all, or we were potentially getting close to seeing it all, but nope. Somebody comes up with something new and novel, and it works. And certainly some of that has been a catalyst of COVID, right? Entering into the marketplace and accelerating a lot of the stuff that was probably in the works, but not quite in the mass, but now it is. Along those lines, you shared something the other day that I think is really germane, as of late anyway, about re-entering the office. I think Patrick Lencioni, Linconi? Okay. I always mispronounce his last name. Apologize, Patrick. I'm sure he's not watching.
I probably mispronounced it too.
Okay. Yeah, I was just, and you quipped on that, our teams need to be equipped to help people with reentry services. And can you expand on that? I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was super interesting too. And I'm feeling it. I home office for the most part, but prior to COVID, I was out seeing clients quite a bit, out on properties, out in their offices. And now here we are starting to re-enter and take in-person meetings again. And I don't know how everybody else feels, but it's really hard for me to factor in drive time.
Yes.
Which also means I have to factor in that whole routine of getting out of the house again. And everything down to making sure I feed the dog before I leave the house, because I can't just pop down between meetings and do that quick again.
Right.
Or, making sure you lock things up or turn things off. I mean, you just are out of sync of that routine. And it resonated with me personally, but it also resonated with me across our properties. Many of our teams are starting to come back. On-site teams, for the most part, have been back, but corporate office teams are starting to go back. And I think this general feeling of reacclimating to a structured routine where you are in a physical space for an entire day that's away from your home and away from getting a little thing done here and there and keeping up with household management is going to be hard. And, some of the talking points in that podcast about just allowing people to feel that sense of loss and having some flexibility and maybe balance in their household and allowing them to get past that was interesting. And when I took that and applied it to multifamily, because that's what I do with every single podcast I listen to or every information piece I have, I applied it in my head to multifamily thinking our residents have all been home constantly for the last year. And now they're starting to leave again. And probably many more have pets that they adopted during COVID times and were used to having someone home all the time. Now they're having to leave that pet. They're having to leave, this household where they got stuff done between the cracks in their day, a load of laundry or, grocery shopping delivery. And now that stuff needs to happen around the workday. And how do we take and use that as a service layer in making their lives easier as people start to re-enter over these next couple of months? Do we give them an easy way to pick up grab and go breakfast on the way out the door, or an easy way to order dinner to be delivered right when they get home, an easy way to pick up their packages? I know that's just a, never ending topic.
Right.
Walk their dog, get stuff done. How do we ease that burden as they go back to work and make them feel like, oh, thank you. Just that one day of having a meal ready to go and not have to think about it was such a blessing.
That's right. And you bring to mind, just this week I was having a conversation with a team member who has a cat, and she got a call from a roommate that her cat, the second she walked out the door to come to our corporate office, the cat started just meowing, but almost like screaming and right, it was and protesting the fact that she had walked out the door and wasn't going to be back for a while. It got several text messages over the course of 2 or 3 hours, and the cat had not stopped since the moment she left out or the house. So that's real, right?
Yeah.
Pets are almost over socialized now, and now we're going to have to. There's going to be this grieving period to use your word to get people back to a normal sort of routine and protocol.
Right.
And
right.
if we can insert ourselves in that would be useful.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought he made a great point too. And just, it's not necessarily that people are protesting coming back to the office or struggling with the piece of coming back. It's that you have to get through that first couple of weeks of completely rebalancing. It's shocking to the system.
Yes, that's right. I recall many people saying in the early innings, do your best to keep your routine, because it's when you have to make this shift back, it'll be a shock to your system. So
For
that's
sure.
good stuff. Good stuff. I want so I really love your Cadence Connect sessions that you do. There's several that are super interesting. I think this idea, this concept, this new way of doing business in terms of centralized leasing. I mean, we could say centralized leasing has been around for a while, call it, call center, but I think there's sort of a different definition coming to be I'm interested based on that last episode that you did. You pointed out 5 things. I think you did a little brief afterwards. Can you kind of talk through centralized leasing from your perspective and how you see that evolving?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is one of my favorite topics.
It's
Because I was telling you, I was listening to your conversation with Mike Whaling, and it just brought me back to conversations he and I had 7 years ago
right.
about
Right.
exactly this subject. And, I'm going to talk about it in terms of if we had zero barriers to make this all happen, if budget wasn't an item and bandwidth of staff wasn't an item and technology involved wasn't an item, how could we serve our prospects differently and arrange our employees differently? And you look at other industries like hospitality or airlines, and I know those are huge industries, but there is not a solo person that takes you through the entire ticketing process at the airport, from purchasing your ticket to coming up and getting your seat assignment and checking in and serving you on the plane and greeting you when you get off at the next destination. And we expect this of our leasing agents. And one of the things that I think is surfacing, first of all, we have a crisis of enough employees. We are constantly hiring across the industry. I can't remember the stat that I saw the other day, but it was monumental, the number of positions on site that were available across the industry.
That's right.
And this is a frontline staff level, right? This leasing. So we hire entry-level people. We expect them to be the first impression of our assets. We expect them to take people through the initial conversation all the way to the tour, to signing the lease documents and understanding the math behind it and the finances behind it, and prep for the move-in. And we've gotten to a point marketing where we have a lot more tools than we used to have. And these leads are coming at rapid pace through, let's say, 6 different channels in terms of text, chat, email, phone, messenger. They're coming, walk-in, maybe those are coming back. And we're expecting them to balance all of that in addition to residents coming through the office, vendors coming through the office, fellow team members. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, we struck up the conversation. All of the Cadence Connect conversations come out of some sort of pain point that we're seeing in the industry that we need to have a bigger conversation about and evolve a little bit. They're not set up to be a provider of solutions. You don't walk away from a Cadence Connect session with a solution in place, but you walk away with a lot of talking points to think it through for your own organization. Yeah. And whether it's centralizing or it's regionalizing or it's even just a pocket or a pod of sites in a similar geographic area, I just can't see a reason that we can't get to a point where we have a frontline leasing person who is absolutely stellar at that first initial conversation with prospects, talking them through what it is that they need, what it is that they want, and taking them to the point of scheduling multiple appointments, and then following up with them after they've toured the property so that the on-site leasing people can be absolutely stellar at the tour.
Right.
Why do we have to have people that are stellar at everything? And David Kiner, who was kind enough to sit on the panel in that session, brought up a really excellent point that the longevity of folks in leasing positions is not that long. Maybe 6 months to a year that people stay in a leasing position before they bounce to another site or to an assistant manager position. That's not long enough to hone skills in all those levels.
No.
Converting first leads and the tours and, being ready for move-ins and giving the best prospect experience, you barely have enough time to learn the technology. And we changed that at rapid fire too.
That is so true.
So it was a really compelling conversation in terms of trying to make this whole experience more prospect-centric, and how much could we move the needle if we could keep a prospect within a portfolio instead of just within a site pipeline.
Right.
And how much more could we convert first leads to tours if we had highly skilled people that were taking them through that first conversation? And same thing with tours to applications to qualified renters.
That's right.
As an industry, we close 5% of our leads. What
Yes,
happens to the other 95%? This has been a burning question of mine for 25 years.
that's right. And it seems like to me with a blend of, let's call it artificial intelligence, no matter how you might define that. I think there are varying definitions of that, but call it chatbots, call it path-based, however you employ that. There's some element of technology there on the front side that it doesn't take away the personality that you mentioned, because that is important, I believe, but it helps uh, it helps with that volume problem, right? So I think
Agreed.
if you get a nice blend between person and human, where the where the technology is handing off to the human at the right point, right?
Yep.
Maybe that rate goes up.
Yeah, and that's an area that I think we always can perfect as well. This whole process of the handoff of the online experience to the human experience and
Right.
reducing that friction factor in there, because I think, especially in 2020, we all onboarded so much technology so fast that going back and actually experiencing the entire process as a prospect, it can feel really disjointed.
That's right. You bring up a really good point there. I think many times I'm guilty of this. We see this technology, in a presentation on a screen, and it looks really slick, and then I never go through the experience myself after the technology has been employed. It's amazing, right? And,
Right.
you know, people complain about it, but it was really slick on the presentation. So
Yeah, I think leasing teams would probably have a much better time closing those leads if they knew exactly what was happening at each process.
that's right. Right. You need to understand every piece, my imagination tells me you have this sort of mapped out customer experience, right? And all the touch
Yep.
points along that continuum, and you need to understand each one of those, and so you can understand how to hand off. One of the most interesting things out of that particular Cadence Connect that you did, that I'm just on a mission myself, but time, right? The real benefit here is giving time back to people to actually create relationship, right?
Yes, I
We
know your
want,
mission on this.
yeah, remove the transactions, right? We can
Yep.
disappear all the transactions, and we need to get back to person. So can
Yeah.
you expand on that one piece a little bit more, the time piece, and how you see that playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gosh, you think about, let's just take an average 200 unit property and figure they're maybe seeing, let's call it, just to be safe, let's call it 10 leads, 10 new leads a day.
Yes.
And then let's add in the fact that it's now taking anywhere from 8 to 15 touch points to move a fresh lead, a cold lead, into a hot lead, and move them all the way through the process to the point of applying and qualifying and moving in.
Right.
So take those first 10 leads, multiply them by another 10 contact points. This is now 100 contact points that need to happen for every 10 leads that come in the door. And this is what we're putting on, this is what staff is expected to do. And we give them all these powerful CRM tools that are really cool. And they're supposed to wipe out all their follow-ups every day. But it becomes very, very transactional. Check it off the list, check it off the list, keep moving, keep moving. We've got too much to do. We've got people in front of us. We've got, people moving in. We've got crisis out the door, at the pool, whatever it may be. It's a lot.
That's
So
right.
you take that time factor right there and take a property that has a property manager and a part-time leasing agent, and where are they buckling? Are they buckling on the prospect experience, or are they buckling on the resident experience? You know what happens when we try to do too many things all at once? We don't do any of it as well as we could.
No, if you're striving for perfection and excellence in this business, at least as we've designed it to date, it's
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it is near impossible for any one or two human beings to pull it off in a way that's, and you want it to be
Right.
excellent, right? You want it, and even those people that are serving those individuals want it to be of high level, but they just can't. You can't do it.
Right.
You can't do it.
Agreed.
So, which leads me to a point. I know we were talking right before hitting the record button. Something that was really interesting to me in terms of mentorship. You made the point that many of our marketing team members across the multifamily space, cross industry, are being put in scenarios where they are 1 or 1.5 of a team member, trying to juggle ever-changing marketing technologies, ever-changing business routines. Talk to me a little bit about the thing that you are trying to create to the word combat comes to mind, but sort of
Yeah.
mentor and lead those people. I found
Yeah,
that.
let's call it support.
Okay, perfect. I like that.
Support and serve.
I like
You
that
know,
much.
I think I play a rare role in this conversation because I have been boots on the ground in those marketing departments. You know, when I started at my first company, we were 2,000 units and grew to 15,000 before I left. And that department went from me, myself, and I to 18 people deep. So I know the struggles of being solo in that role and also having multiple people in the role and never feeling like you can entirely keep up. And now stepping out into consulting and serving a lot of other clients, there are so many organizations out there that are somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 units that have a version of a marketing director in place. It might be someone that was on site that really seemed to have the marketing chops and got pulled into a marketing position in corporate. And it might be, in some cases, it's someone that is not new to the industry, but is new to that marketing role. In other cases, it might be that someone with a huge marketing background got hired into multifamily. Great marketing chops, little industry knowledge.
Right.
And what I have found along the way is that there's just not good mentorship out there. There's not great resources on a daily basis for the marketing role in this industry. There's some really fantastic conferences like AIM. There's some great sessions at NAA. There are some, good product partner sessions like Zillow puts a good thing on and Apartment List puts Spark on, and there are those larger scale conferences, but on a regular basis, our property managers and our maintenance people can rely on their local association for some pretty good routine training.
That's right.
Marketing level does not have that.
That's right.
And let's face it, there are some nuances to this industry. First of all, if you come to this industry from outside the industry and expect it to be a similar experience, it's not. We're weird.
We are weird.
We have all sorts of, we have the company brand, we have all the individual products, the property brands. Every single one of them is financed under different ownership, or it's third party managed, or it's owned, but it's not owned by that owner. And you have to be so careful and cautious about how you blend everything together. And then add on to it that we sort of expect, we're very loose with the term marketing. It may oversee leasing and marketing and advertising, and it may oversee just placing of ads and graphic design. So there's a whole lot of bleeding of services in there. Sometimes it oversees operations. That's right. I really caught on quickly to the fact that there's just a need for connecting marketers out there to networks who speak their language, because we speak a different language. And it's not always fully understood by regional managers or even by those that marketers report to. They often report to the president or the CEO directly.
Right.
That person doesn't necessarily have time to know every single new product that Zillow is launching, or that, the CRMs that are out there, or the platforms that are available. So I'm trying to really be a voice for marketing teams across multifamily. And it started locally here in the Twin Cities with this Cadence Connect event. And the first couple of events, we had a year under our belt before COVID hit, and we were at, 40, 50 people that showed up. And we'd have just a topic of conversation that was very quick and, got people thinking, but then it was really centered around networking and building some friendships with people in that room. I think you and I were mentioning it that, some of us go way back to early 2000s and going to some of these conferences and meeting up and getting to know each other. And it was kind of an exciting time that we all were on, Twitter conversations together or LinkedIn conversations together. And we actually enjoyed the opportunity to meet face to face and build relationships. And many of these I have kept across my entire career, 20 years. And it has played out very, very well for me, and I hope for others too. I can't imagine where I'd be without those networks. So I'm really hoping to build the same thing for marketers out there today and giving them a place to come and network with other marketers, but also a one-on-one opportunity to mentor those who are moving initiatives in their organization. One-on-one conversations about how to tackle that conversation on what you're trying to recommend that you know is going to be really hard to get approved. Or we talked about this too, moving an entire initiative across an organization that requires changing behavior of on-site teams who don't report to you.
That's right.
That's not easy.
That's right. That's right.
And trying to have, your set of drivers on these initiatives that help champion this outcome that you're trying to get to. And then, of course, avoiding the launch and leave it syndrome, which I think is really prevalent in how fast we move, how fast we launch, how fast we onboard, how fast we move to the next thing. And you never really understand why you're only leveraging 10% of that technology tool that you thought you were going to just have this out of the park experience with. You can't launch and leave it. You have to continue to nurture it and, create best practices and test it and push it a little bit. So these are all pieces that Cadence Marketing Solutions is really starting to develop, is this network for marketing departments and marketing folks to find their people and find conversations that help them move through wherever they're at in their company. It's a lease up that they're taking on for the first time. Join the lease up group. It's, rolling a huge initiative, onboarding CRM or onboarding completely new website tools. Join the conversation with that team. And get to know your people that are in the same boat at the same time.
I think that is so important. I'm so thrilled to hear that you have created and you're fostering that. And I imagine as we continue to come out of COVID and getting that back to an in-person experience, it's so interesting to me, having spent a long bit of time in this interesting news site back in the early 2000s. It was amazing to me how willing everyone was at the time. I think we were all trying to learn how to use these new technologies. We were all quickly becoming practitioners, but how generous everyone was with their time, right? I remember staying on Twitter well into the midnight hour, right? 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, talking with industry people about just whatever it was we were facing at the time. And to your point, building those relationships, so much so that when you show up at the conference, you felt like you already knew the people.
Right.
You didn't meet them. But I think that is an important thing to note, that your mentor doesn't mean you're sitting on the phone every morning or every Monday morning at 8 o'clock at a program time. You just need to be able to pick up the phone and call someone.
Right.
And you setting the forum for that in terms of building the relationships is so important.
It's been fantastic. I mean, I just kind of found myself in conversations with clients or just out and about. I'd hear someone talking about an initiative that they're trying to work on or a complex problem they haven't quite found their way all the way through. And I'd hear myself saying, oh, you know who else is working on that? So-and-so. You need to go talk to so-and-so. And then I do the same thing 3 times a week. And it was like, okay, I need to find a way to get everybody in the room and just serve this from a bigger purpose and give people a place and a conversation point to get to know each other. I think I've just always been so grateful for the opportunities that I had when I started marketing in this industry way back when. There were, no joke, only 2 of us in the Twin Cities that were doing marketing in multifamily. So we did rely on each other. Yeah. And to cross state lines and get to know people across the nation. I mean, some of the early brainstorming conferences, that was a room full of my people.
Right. Right. Right.
You had to go a long way and wait a full year to have that kind of opportunity to talk to people. And now marketing departments in this industry have grown so rapidly and expanded so much that now there's, my list of people just in the Twin Cities is 80 deep, and I don't think I have everybody. So when you cross state lines and think about how many people do what we do, we really should be leveraging each other. I'm just an enormous believer in networking and giving generously of your wisdom and your talent, regardless of whether or not you are competitors. It comes back tenfold.
It's so true. It's just it's a natural principle of the world, right?
Yes.
And you may not, that may not come back to you this week or next week or even 6 months from now, but it'll come back at the precise right time that you need it, right?
Right.
Just give. You
Yes.
just have to. So I appreciate you for giving into this industry because it's been amazing the trip that you've made over the last 25 years and how it's evolved for you.
Well, ditto. It's just fantastic to be able to listen to you, and your, 1 to 2 to 3 minute snippets every morning are just amazing.
Oh, well, thank you for
Just
that.
enough with the cup of coffee to get the juices flowing.
Yeah. That was the whole intent. I thought there are lots of smarter people than me that put out long form content, and I'll let them do that, and I'll just do something really quick.
Right. It takes a lot of time to put all of that out, but a quick thought for the day, and you can potentially inspire hundreds, maybe thousands of people is really, it's generous.
It's fun. Thank you for those kind words. Yes. So, okay. We've come to the point where I want to ask you, this is how I sort of start to tie up every episode, but start, stop, keep. So something in, let's say, the balance of this year, or maybe over the next 12 months, that you will start doing, or you'll stop doing, or you'll keep doing.
Okay, start doing. I'm actually going to go off of what I did start this year.
Excellent.
I'm a big goals person. I have to start something new every year. But it dawned on me how much emphasis I put on mentoring others. And I didn't necessarily have a mentor of my own hired. I have a lot that I call on, but I hired a business coach and I hired a wellness coach, both of which I found a way to work into the budget appropriately. But it has been a game changer having someone that I'm accountable to listen to me ramble a little bit and help me consolidate those thoughts.
Awesome. Okay. So start. What about stop?
Stop. This is an interesting one. I have realized just in the last few weeks with trying to go back into in-person meetings, I'm going to have to stop overscheduling Zoom calls. I know I'm not alone. I mean, we go from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., one Zoom after another, because you don't even have to walk down the hall to the next meeting. You just click in, right?
That's right.
I have added absolutely no drive time. So it's really hard for me to schedule in-person meetings now because I have to factor in this whole getting out the door and drive time. And come on, let's face it, actually getting ready.
So true.
Real shoes. Is there even gas in the car? But at the same time, I want to say that I don't want to stop that entirely, because what this whole on-screen experience has given us is the ability to cross beyond geography.
That's right.
Drive time only gets you to meetings that are drivable, but being able to cross and have a face-to-face with you might not have happened before this was so easy.
That is absolutely correct. Okay, what about keep?
Okay, so keep. I think you inspired me in the beginning, before COVID even. You had me on your 100-mile challenges on the Nike running app.
Oh.
Remember this?
I do.
I hung in there on quite a few of them. And then somewhere around May or June last year during COVID, I allowed myself to shift to emotional eating. And I've always been someone who works out and tries to prioritize staying a little bit fit at least. And I'm now having to keep myself focused on reaching for a quick workout, even if it's 10 minutes, over emotional eating. The donut's not getting me anything. Especially from a mental standpoint.
I completely understand all of that. It's hard work, and it's discipline, and it's when you find yourself in isolated, as much as this has been a blessing in so many different ways. I mean, I hate to say that, because in so many ways COVID was not a blessing, but it's hard, right? There's no SOP for this.
Yeah.
And at times you just have to give yourself grace and give yourself space to just be and not.
Agreed.
Work. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't mean you have to show up for an hour-long workout, but I can show up for 6 minutes.
That's right.
And 6 minutes for your mental stamina can do a lot.
So true. So true. Well, tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find you online and connect with you, and I really encourage you to do so. And then any parting words that you might have for the audience.
Sure. You can find me online either at Cadence Marketing Solutions, it's cadencems.com, or Janet Rooseth on LinkedIn, it's Rosseth. Love to connect. And parting words, I am going to go with don't be afraid to surround yourself with people smarter than you. I'm 25 years deep in this industry, and I learn so much every day from people who are new to it. So smarter than you does not have to be necessarily more experienced in this industry, but just willing to think outside the box just a little bit.
So true. Thank you, Janet. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Agreed.